I never imagined my ex-wife would be capable of the kind of selfishness I'd see years after our divorce. But life sometimes has a way of showing us the worst in people when we least expect it. Let me start by saying, I've been battling cancer for the past 2 years. It's been an exhausting, draining experience. Chemotherapy, surgery, you name it. I was fortunate enough to have insurance coverage, but after all the co-pays, deductibles, and out-of-pocket expenses, I've been left scraping by. Now, this might sound strange, but my ex-wife and I have always gotten along pretty well after the divorce. Sure, things were tough when we split, but we'd found a way to co-parent our kids, and I figured we'd just keep things civil. After all, we'd both moved on. She had remarried a guy named Mark who was well off, rich enough to live in a big house and buy nice things. My life wasn't nearly as glamorous, but I was still holding on, fighting for my health. But then things took an unexpected turn. One afternoon, while I was in the middle of a chemo session, I got a text from her. At first, I thought it was just another mundane message about the kids, maybe reminding me of a school event or something. But when I opened it, I was floored. It read, "Hey, I know you're going through a lot right now, but I need to talk to you about something. Mark's son, my new stepson, has been asking for a sports car for his birthday. The one he wants is about $30,000. I was wondering if you could help cover that cost. I know you've been saving up for your cancer treatment, but this is important for our family. We could really use the help." I stared at the text for a few minutes, completely dumbfounded. Help with a sports car? For her new stepson? I had been struggling to pay for my medical bills, and now she was asking me to dip into my limited funds to buy a teenager a sports car? I was speechless. I immediately called her, figuring this had to be a mistake or a joke. When she picked up, I was still in shock. I tried to stay calm, but I couldn't help it. "Are you serious right now?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You want me to give you my money for cancer treatment so you can buy your new stepson a sports car?" She sighed. "I get that this is hard for you, but you need to understand. Mark and I can't afford it right now, and it's a big deal for him. He's been through a lot and really wants it." I almost laughed out of disbelief. "He's been through a lot? You think what I'm going through is any less important?" She sounded defensive. "Look, I'm just asking for a little help. It's not like I'm asking for a huge amount, and it's for the family." I could feel my blood boiling. "I don't have the money to buy a sports car. What I have is for my health, for my future. If I don't get treatment, I don't have a future." But she was relentless. "You're being selfish. It's not like you're going to be around much longer anyway. You should think about what's important right now." The moment those words left her mouth, I felt a sharp pang in my chest. It was cruel. And the worst part? It wasn't the first time she'd said something like that. Things escalated quickly. After I refused to give her the money, she became more and more aggressive, reaching out through texts, emails, and even calling my lawyer. It wasn't long before I was served with papers. She was suing me for the money, claiming I was obligated to contribute to the well-being of the family and that my refusal was unreasonable. The court date arrived, and I could barely believe this was happening. My ex-wife was taking me to court over her new stepson's sports car. The irony was almost unbearable. Here I was, fighting for my life, and she was trying to get a chunk of what little I had to help buy an expensive toy for someone else. In the courtroom, she painted me as a villain. Her lawyer argued that I had the money and that I should be willing to help for the sake of the family. Her new husband, Mark, even testified about how they were financially strapped due to other expenses. When it was my turn, I stood up, feeling both drained and resolute. I explained the situation, the cancer, the treatment costs, the bills I was barely managing to keep up with. I pointed out that while I cared about the kids, I had no obligation to fund someone else's luxury items, especially when it was literally a matter of life or death for me. I reminded the judge that my ex-wife and I were no longer married, and this wasn't a matter of alimony or child support. It was about a sports car. The judge listened carefully. After a long pause, he turned to my ex-wife's lawyer and said, "I don't see how this request is reasonable, considering the circumstances. The defendant has a legitimate need for his funds, and his ex-wife's request appears to be an attempt to shift the burden of her family's lifestyle onto him. The court is going to dismiss this claim." I almost couldn't believe it. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. My ex-wife looked absolutely livid, but there was nothing she could do. The judge's ruling was clear. As I walked out of the courtroom, I felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. It was clear that the person I once trusted had become someone unrecognizable, but at least I'd managed to hold my ground. My ex-wife, of course, didn't take it well. She was furious, calling me selfish and bitter. But honestly, I didn't care anymore. I had to focus on my health, on getting better, and being there for my kids in whatever way I could. Months passed, and I went through more treatments, trying to stay strong. My ex-wife never came to apologize, but I didn't expect her to. I'd learned something valuable through all of this, that even when you think you know someone, people can surprise you with their true colors. As for the stepson, he never did get that sports car. Apparently, he had to settle for a much more modest car that his father could could afford. It wasn't the shiny, new toy he'd hoped for, but sometimes life teaches you hard lessons. In the end, I'm still here, still fighting, still living day by day. And I've learned that no matter how far someone may go to take advantage of you, you always have a choice. You just have to stand firm and not let anyone else decide your fate.